we say this a lot. You can't call yourself the People's College Football Show and then not involve the people in the show. That doesn't make sense, right? So with that being said, went to Twitter. You can find me on Twitter at JD Pickell, and I asked y'all, what would be some of the most surprising headlines that you could see us getting in the 2023 season? And so without further ado, let's just jump into that because we got a lot of great headlines from y'all. And the first one is coming out of the gate hot. All right, we got from college football hullabaloo for y'all, which is a hilarious handle. Shout out college football hullabaloo for y'all. He says LSU is winning the Natty. That's his headline. And y'all, if this were to happen, the impact, the ripple effects this could send across the college football landscape cannot be overstated. For starters, that means that Brian Kelly kept the second-year LSU head coach national title streak alive because you got Kim Mulkey winning it with the women's basketball, you got the baseball team winning natties, and they all did it in their second year. So then you would have Brian Kelly joining that club, which is kind of a fun footnote. And it means a lot of things that are obvious. It probably means Jaden Daniels was balling. This conversation around him stretching the ball vertical and the offense being explosive, like that probably happened if they win a national title. The defense was continuing to be elite. That's likely what happened. You probably beat Georgia and Alabama. If not splitting, you probably beat both of them. I would imagine you beat somebody like a Michigan or a Georgia for a national title, so who knows how many times you had to beat Georgia. But for LSU, I think what's most important about this headline, if this were to happen, it means that they had a championship culture solidified in a ridiculous amount of time under Brian Kelly. Because last year we talked about it a lot. Oh, what LSU team are we going to get? Are we going to get first half of Auburn LSU? Are we going to get LSU that played against Bama? Are we going to get the LSU against Texas A&M? Like, which LSU team is showing up today? And if they were to put it together in just the second year under Brian Kelly, I think that would create something that would be scary for the rest of college football because I think that would mean they have something sustainable. That means it was internal with the locker room. That means it was player bought in. That means you have leaders in that locker room that are going to cultivate more leaders, and then this machine really gets rolling. So if they win a national title in 2023, that is just the tip of the iceberg for LSU and for Brian Kelly. I truly believe that. I think that's not the last one he wins at LSU going forward. Spoiler alert, I think he's already going to win one at some point in time in Baton Rouge, but that's neither here nor there. Now, this is another thing that's interesting about this. If they were to win a national title, think about what this would mean for Brian Kelly. Because he left Notre Dame, and there was so much made about him leaving Notre Dame, and so much that he said, essentially saying, hey, I didn't have what I needed at Notre Dame. He didn't say it that bluntly, so I'm going to say it for him. He didn't have what he needed to compete with the Bamas, with the Georgias, with the Ohio States, the Michigans. He didn't have that at Notre Dame. Resource-wise, recruiting-wise, all that. He was kind of handcuffed a little bit. And so the heat that he took leaving Notre Dame, it was hot, all right? There was a lot thrown his way about leaving Notre Dame. If he wins a national title in year 2 at LSU, that means Brian Kelly and the bet that he made on himself, all that he said he needed, was right. That means he made good and he cashed in on his bets. You would have to love that for Brian Kelly, unless, of course, you are a fan of the Fighting Irish in South Bend. So a lot to unpack there, but if LSU wins a natty, the impact of that on the college football landscape would be enormous. Appreciate everybody tuned in live. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. KJ Bolden committing on this channel. Make sure you're locked in. That's all I'm going to say. Now, Florida Sooner got at us and said Oklahoma returns to the college football playoff partly due to a weak Big 12. Now, Oklahoma making the college football playoff, I don't think that's nearly as far-fetched as some people want to make it out to be. Because Brent Venables went 6-7, and there's so many punchlines and all the jokes made, about Oklahoma and all that they didn't achieve in 2022. And I get that, I understand that, but they lost 5 games by 1 score, meaning they were in the majority, if not all of the games that they played. One of those 1-score losses was to Florida State, who's going to be a top 5 team to start the year. So, for Oklahoma, if they were to make the college football playoff, it means a couple of things. It means the portal additions that they made defensively probably fixed that defense. Defense was bad, no other way around it. Brent Venables knows that. That's why he went to the portal and added 9 cats via the defense. It also means offensively, you probably saw Dylan Gabriel take another step in that offense. You probably saw his development under Jeff Lebby and the time they've spent together. Probably see some dividends there. Even more importantly, you see someone on the outside at the wide receiver position, whether it's Jaleel Farouk, whether it's Angelo Anthony, you see somebody step up big time and be a go-to alpha dog wide receiver for them. Because that's how this offense is built now. That's how this offense is built. We're going to run the football. We're going to go fast. We're going to spread you out. We're going to win outside. We're going to strike up the band. That's how we get down to Norman, Oklahoma. That's what Jeff Lebby wants to do. And for them to be able to do that probably means they're averaging somewhere around 40 points a game, which is what every team that made the college football playoff averaged last year. Now, Oklahoma, they averaged over 30 last year. But that incremental bump to get to 40 points a game and see the defense improve, that's how they get to the college football playoff. Now, if they get to the college football playoff, probably means they won the Big 12. Now, our friend Florida Sooner is saying that he thinks Oklahoma making the college football playoff would say something about where the Big 12 is. Thinks the Big 12 could be maybe a little bit weaker. And I don't think it's impossible, but I would be very much surprised, which I guess kind of goes hand in hand with the exercise, if that were to be the case. Because to be real, I think Texas is going to be real good. I think Texas is going to be really good. And for Oklahoma fans, you probably want Texas to be good because you want to go through them. Now, do you want them to be good every single year? Maybe not. But you don't want the asterisk of, well, Texas was down bad. Well, they had some injuries along that roster, and now we don't get to claim the 2023 season like we want to. No. You want Texas to be at their best, and you want to beat Texas. That's what rivalry is all about, baby. You want to take down your brother, and that's what it is. So for Texas, I think they're going to be good. I think you could see a world where Texas goes 11-2, and they have 2 losses to Oklahoma, one during the regular season and one in the Big 12 title game. Heck, you could see Texas go 12-1 and drop one game in the Big 12 title game, and maybe they're a college football playoff bubble team. Like, I don't know how that situation works out, but I actually think that the Big 12 is going to be a dogfight week in and week out. If Oklahoma does make the college football playoff, I don't think it'll be because of a weak Big 12 conference. In fact, I think the opposite. I think we look on Selection Sunday, maybe you see Oklahoma's a one-loss champ in the Big 12, and we just say, yeah, but Big 12 was brutal this year. The Big 12 was wild this year. We'll take a one-loss Big 12 champ over a one-loss ACC champ or a one-loss Pac-12 champ. So I think, to answer your question, Florida Sooner, and to kind of commentate on this a little bit more, I think a strong Big 12 actually boosts a Big 12 champion like Oklahoma into the college football playoff. There's definitely a path. But again, requires the defense and those portal ads paying dividends, and requires that offense having someone on the outside step up and be more explosive. So definitely a possibility. A lot more possible than I think a lot of people would like to acknowledge, to be real with you. Now, this is where it gets a little bit steamy, a little bit hot. Erskine on Twitter just called his shot, said Joe Milton gets benched. And this is one that we're going to get a lot of feedback on. And if Joe Milton does get benched, there's a couple of scenarios where this could happen. The first of which being, though, I don't think you would put all the blame on Joe Milton. And what I mean by that is Tennessee last year, they were a run-first football team. Jalen Hyatt's deep. He's just beating guys one-on-one, and those safeties have no chance to catch him because he's so fast, and Hendon Hooker's dropping it in the breadbasket. That all happened, but it happened because they had a run game that forced that secondary to commit numbers to where you had real estate on the back end for Jalen Hyatt to just get loose like it was his job. Now, instead of saying Jalen Hyatt this coming year, you'll say Squirrel White, but the same fact remains. This offense, the batteries for this offense are running the football. And one reason why I personally am so high on Joe Milton is I think they're going to allow him to play to his strengths. Like, I think they're not going to ask him to do a 3-step drop and fit it in a tight window and make a bunch of NFL kind of throws where he's got to be on the money, on time every single time. He may be able to do that, but his ability, his bag really, is his arm strength. Cut it loose, hit him deep, let's roll. So with that being said, if the run game isn't rolling how it's supposed to, and we take Joe Milton out of what he does well, well, then I think maybe Joe Milton could have some issues and could struggle, and that's any quarterback across the country, should you take him out of their comfort zone. So that's the first scenario. The other scenario, and this is the one that Tennessee fans are probably most concerned with, is that plays are there, and those accuracy issues that people have sort of snickered at behind the scenes and, kind of had their doubts about Joe Milton. They're saying he's not going to be accurate. He's going to be overthrow Joe, all those punchlines. And so if that happens, yeah, if there's plays there and you're missing on them consistently and it's hamstringing us as a football team, well, then maybe you do have to have a conversation about moving on and starting the Nico era early. Now, there's a fraction of this fan base, probably a fraction of the college football public, that wants it to be Nico time in Tennessee. And I don't blame you because he's a phenomenal player. He's the number one player for us here at On 3. But even so, he was the number one player for us here at On 3 in the 2023 cycle, that is. But even so, I'd be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you wish for because we all want to see the shiny new 5-star hit the field and sling it around and, the unknown is undefeated. But even so, man, for Nico, there's such a thing as playing too early. Two things can happen when you play too early as a quarterback. One, you can develop bad habits. You're used to playing high school ball. You're used to making plays and scrambling around and throwing it across the yard and throwing it back across your body. Like whatever the habit is, if you have some success with that, you go back to it. And typically the thing with bad habits is it works one time, so you think it's going to work a lot of the time, and that just becomes something you rely on. And then when it stops working and teams watch enough tape on you, then you're in trouble. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying it's a potential that you probably don't want young Nico to have to live in as a true freshman at Tennessee. The other potential issue is you get thrown in the fire too early. Maybe, you're forced to play early from injury, or in this situation, I guess Joe Milton's not getting it done, so you force Nico in there. You can hurt your confidence a lot. Like if you go out there and you throw 3 interceptions as a true freshman against whatever opponent it is, you got people lighting up your Twitter mentions saying you're no good, you're a bust. And it's like, dude, he's been on campus all of like 45 minutes. We have no idea what he's going to be as a true freshman. But you get enough chatter around you and you're so young and you've got so many loud voices, that can really start to eat away at your confidence. And when your confidence gets bruised, that's the thing that really takes the longest to recover in my estimation. So I'm not saying that Nico couldn't step in there and absolutely ball out. In fact, the opposite. I think he'll be a stud when it's his time to play in Knoxville. But I think right now it's Joe Milton's time. So if he does get benched, I think that will be something that Coach Heupel and the coaching staff has absolutely no choice but to make a different move within the quarterback room. So I don't think that will happen, but that's sort of my feel as to what the situation could be should that headline become a reality. Now, J.J. McCarthy is the topic of our next one I want to talk about here. And our friend Sir on Twitter hit us up. He just called his shot here and says J.J. McCarthy wins the Heisman Trophy. How about that now? J.J. McCarthy hoisting the little bronze statue in New York City. Place goes crazy. Probably gives a great speech. J.J. McCarthy, friend of the program, by the way. So shouts out to him. It's easy to breeze past this headline and say, oh, yeah, Michigan's probably going to be one of the best teams in the country. He's the quarterback for that team, so they're probably, the 1 or 2 ranked team in the country. And, yeah, he gets the award. Big whoop. No. If J.J. McCarthy wins the Heisman, the impact of this would be enormous. Because think about who else is on that roster. Blake Corum, who probably woulda, shoulda, coulda been invited to the Heisman Trophy ceremony a season ago had he not gotten hurt. Donovan Edwards is probably going to put up numbers as well. Like, the identity of this team a season ago was we're going to punch you in the mouth, we're going to run the football, and that's going to be how we get down. So if J.J. McCarthy wins the Heisman Trophy, that means this offense is playing a style of football to where he is able to put up just ridiculous kind of numbers. Because people say stats don't matter. They matter for the Heisman Trophy. All right? They matter for those that vote because you have a lot of people just sort of scanning box scores and picking the quarterback for the best team. But if J.J. McCarthy doesn't have the stats, this doesn't happen. So in this situation, let's say he throws for over 3,000 yards and he throws for right around 30 touchdowns. Maybe he's around 40 touchdowns. Like, if he puts up video game numbers, that means the offense is playing in a style to allow him to do that, which is crucial because we all talk about the next step for Michigan, and this would be it. Having a dynamic, explosive, vertical passing attack, that would be the next step for Michigan. That would make them dangerous for the rest of the college football public. It would, I promise you, because then you pair dynamic passing attack with elite run game. I don't know how you defend Michigan at that point, man. At that point, if Michigan and J.J. McCarthy are playing at this level, they're probably scoring well over 40 a game like they were last year, but they're doing it in a way to where you are just without answers in the pass game and in the run game. Because you can't add numbers to the box to try and account for Blake Corum because J.J. McCarthy is throwing for around 300 a game. And if he does that, this is the other thing I want to talk about here, it means that you had some weapons at Michigan step up and just be playmakers that are pass catchers for you. I'm talking Roman Wilson is unguardable. I'm talking about Colston Loveland. Looks like a matchup nightmare, and he takes that next step as a sophomore. Cornelius Johnson looks like the Cornelius Johnson that we saw against Ohio State. That would be the reality for Michigan, and that would also be interesting because that means you had multiple guys step up, so you couldn't just double one of them. Like, if it's just the Cornelius Johnson show next year at Michigan, that'll be cool. It'll last for a few games, but that's not a sustainable way for J.J. McCarthy to win the Heisman Trophy. If he wins the Heisman, multiple dudes stepped up and got after it for Michigan. Last thing I'll say about this, if J.J. McCarthy and Michigan are operating this way and J.J. McCarthy does win the Heisman Trophy, I have a very difficult time believing that Michigan is also not hoisting the national title trophy. I truly believe that. They've got so much up front, so much back on defense. If J.J. McCarthy is at a Heisman level, they will win the national title. Period. Mic drop. The end. We'll leave it at that, and I'm sure that the comment section will have nothing to say about that. So I'm looking forward to reading that. Last one we got here for you is from our good friend Coach Riggs, and he says that Oregon State wins the Pac-12 in 2023. That is his headline. That would be a headline and a half because that means that USC didn't win it. It means Oregon didn't win it. It means Utah didn't do the Pac-12 three-peat. This would also mean that Oregon State, and wouldn't you know it, DJ Uiagalelei just sort of reinvented himself, got to Corvallis, Oregon, and went bananas. A little DJU special in Corvallis. It also means they probably overcame the 52% production they have coming back defensively. It's not bad, but it's not quite as much as you would hope for if you're trying to make a Pac-12 title run. Now, here's the thing. I want to go back to DJU. If he gets his storybook ending to where he rides off into the sunset with the Pac-12 title trophy, think about who that points the finger back at now. And the index finger now, no other finger. Points the index finger right back at Clemson. And I think also there's a lot of people that would owe DJ Uiagalelei apologies. Because a lot of people said, oh, he's a 5-star this, he's a 5-star that. He gets to Clemson and look at what he did. Loses his job in the ACC title game. He wasn't good enough at Clemson. Where was this at Clemson? Well, then I think you start to say, well, he did it at Oregon State. What changed? Same quarterback. I'm sure he probably got in his bag in the offseason and really worked hard, but the system, I think, is what would get the most heat at Clemson. And I know now they have a new system and that OC is no longer there, but you hear what I'm saying now. There'd be a lot of people that would owe DJ Uiagalelei apologies. Now, this is my gut feeling. If this were to be a reality, if Oregon State does win the Pac-12, people aren't going to like this, but I think that means that the Pac-12 gets left out of the college football playoff yet again. Because that would mean if Oregon State were to win the deal, I have a very difficult time believing that they get to the Pac-12 title game undefeated. I have a hard time seeing that. They play Utah, they play Washington, they play Oregon, no USC. But, I mean, if Oregon State gets there, I don't know if they get there unblemished. I also don't know that you see anybody else in the Pac-12 lose the Pac-12 title game to Oregon State and be undefeated and still find a way in. To get to the college football playoff from the Pac-12, got to be undefeated. So if it is what I think it's going to be this coming season, where it's just gladiator style, good luck to everybody else. But if Oregon State wins it, I think that would be a phenomenal storyline. I'd love that headline, but I think it does end up leaving the Pac-12 out in the cold when it comes to the college football playoff. Hey, y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.